I welcome you all to this fifth Dockside Chat sponsored by the Carteret County Democratic Party. This is the first in a two-part series on water quality. Tonight we focus on coastal water quality. My name is Susan Schur. I'm a retired German professor from Central Pennsylvania, living in Morehead City. I want to thank the volunteers who've made the Dockside Chat a reality. Katie Tomberlin, the chair of the Carteret County Democratic Party, Maria Zempel, Amy Voorhees, Lucy Bond, and Wendy Boss. I am delighted to introduce our guests this evening in the order in which they will speak. Larry Baldwin became the Lower Neuse Riverkeeper in 2002 and held the position until November of 2011. During that time, the impact of CAFO, concentrated animal feeding operations, became impossible to ignore in the Neuse River and other water bodies in North Carolina. This prompted Larry's work with the environmental justice organizations and communities to reduce, hopefully stop, the negative impacts that the swine and poultry industries exert on the water, air, and families living in the vicinity of these operations. In November of 2011, he joined Waterkeeper Alliance as North Carolina CAFO coordinator, working with 8 riverkeeper programs throughout North Carolina to end the stranglehold the CAFO industry has on our environment and our communities. He became the Crystal Coast Waterkeeper in 2016. Welcome, Larry. We're very happy to have you here.
Thank you very much, Sue. But wow, it's great to see a lot of people I haven't seen for quite a while.
Yes.
Hopefully we get to the point where we can do it in person.
Yes,
real soon.
So fingers crossed.
Thanks to all of you for having us tonight. And I'm in really good company, as you're going to see later on when we have Rett Newton will be part of this conversation as well too. So one of my heroes. So. So Sue, do you just want me to kind of get into the questions that or the?
I do, but I'll tell you what, let me introduce Rett Newton first.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
We'll jump into the questions. That's fine. That's fine. We're very relaxed here. It's all good. Rett Newton grew up in Beaufort and graduated from East Carteret High School in 1978. He has a bachelor's degree in mathematics from Campbell University, a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from the Air Force Institute of Technology, a master's degree from American Military University, and he is currently working toward a PhD in marine science and conservation at Duke University. During his 28-year military career, he was an F-4 and F-15 pilot, spent 7 years as an Arabic officer, and was the F-15 squadron commander in Goldsboro. While in the Air Force, he responded to many crises, including flying combat air patrols to protect Washington, D.C. during and after 9/11, and assisting the large-scale disaster relief effort that followed the 2004 tsunami in South Asia. He retired to Beaufort, where he has served as mayor since 2017, and he is currently a Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate. Welcome, Rett.
Thank you so much, Sue. Really appreciate the opportunity, and lots of great friends here. I know they're going to be throwing me some pretty good fastballs here later on, so really appreciate this opportunity.
Well, good. We like fastballs. A little housekeeping. All participants will be muted during the presentation, and we will unmute you for 2 minutes at the end of the chat for goodbyes. Please add your hardball questions to the chat box, and Wendy Boss will sort and collate them for us at the end of the program. I have an opening question for both Larry and Rett that they can toss back and forth a little bit. The short version of this question is, what happened? And the long version is, in 1953, the packaging, I repeat, packaging industry launched the Keep America Beautiful campaign to divert attention from its own culpability and to place responsibility onto consumers with a fair amount of success. By the late 1950s, anti-litter ordinances were being passed in state houses across the country, while not a single restriction on packaging could be found anywhere. And yet, anti-litter was a prevalent sentiment. I do personally remember the anti-litter campaign and community enthusiasm for it. No one wanted to be a litter bug. What happened, Larry and Rett, in your opinion, that almost 70 years later, complaints about litter on our highways and our waterways surface regularly in the local newspaper, and local groups must repeatedly, form action campaigns to collect litter? Our own House representative, Dr. Greg Murphy, wrote a letter to the local newspaper after a drive through Eastern Carteret County asking us to do better. So where did we go so far off course? What are your opinions on this? Who would like to start?
Go ahead, Rett.
So the ultimate solution, we need to play a long game here, right? So we can look historically on how we got to this place right now. And as we look at solutions, corporate America needs to be part of that solution. There needs to be incentives to get away from single-use plastics. And I prefer to look through the windscreen rather than look in the rearview mirror on these type of things. But it's going to take, this is a really complex problem. It's not the corporations that are throwing their cigarette butts or their plastic bags or their styrofoam cups out of their vehicles or out of their boat as well. Clearly, the burden has been placed on the citizens, and the corporations do need to be part of this solution. And you are starting to hear more about this. Certainly at the Marine Debris Symposium, you started to hear a little bit more about this. But this is going to take time. And I think for me, it's how do we change a culture so that people don't feel comfortable throwing their cigarette butts or their plastic bags or their styrofoam cups into our streets or into our waterways. And you would not imagine doing that in Germany or in Japan or in other countries. So that cultural element is there, so that doesn't happen. And really, the amount of debris that's in our waterways now is clearly unsustainable. So it has to be, we have to reverse this trend that's going on. And again, corporations need to be part of that process. They do have buy-in, but there also could be incentives to get away from single-use plastics.
Good, I agree completely. Would you like to add to that, Larry?
I'm not going to add much because it was very well put. I think one of the things that Rett touched on is, this is not a simple problem. We'd like, as he said, we'd like to be able to point the fingers at the manufacturers. We got to, as they say, whenever you point a finger at somebody, there's three more pointing back at you. And you're right. So these, the campaigns from years ago, and we can probably all remember the one of the Native American guy standing on the side of the road. Why can't we touch people that way anymore? He had a tear running down his face at the end of the commercial, and I think most of the rest of us did as well. It would be great if it was just as easy to say, okay, here's one aspect that we need to fix. Yes, there is responsibility from the packaging industry. Okay, they're not going to be in a big hurry to change things if we don't force them to change. And it takes a lot of effort, and it takes kind of getting down in the weeds and getting in the dirt. But I think we're at a if we're not there, we're very close to a tipping point where it's going to take just a monumental effort and monumental money to get us out of this thing. But we can't go down the road saying, well, it's somebody else's problem. It's our problem. And I can probably admit that back in the earlier days, I was probably one of those who thought, well, our earth can take it, just throw away all you want. Then we got into the need for fast food and convenient food, So the industry, the packaging industry, rolled right along with that. And we all know where a lot of the packaging materials come from. It's coming from oil. So it's kind of like an onion. You pull one layer back, there's another layer underneath of it, and they're all stinking layers at this point. So it is going to take a monumental effort. And is it frustrating? And I know many of us on this call are ones who are willing to go out along a roadside or a creek or on the water and do a cleanup. But it's very frustrating as well too, to do those cleanups and come back a month later. It's like, well, what happened? But we can't stop, but we also cannot stop talking about the problem.
Good. Well, since you talked about the past a little bit, why don't you continue and tell us about the path that led you to devote so much time and energy to coastal water quality?
Sure, it goes pretty much way back for me. I did my school paper on Jacques Cousteau, and that's pretty much hooked. Never got the chance to meet him, but we did have the opportunity to bring his granddaughter, Alexandra Cousteau, came to New Bern when I was the Neuse Riverkeeper for 3 days, which was awesome. I don't know that there's any one, like, turn the light on. It's just being able to see over time that this is a problem. So my path was one that took a little longer than it probably should have. I got out of high school. I went to college for 3 semesters and thought I knew more than the professors did, so I stopped. And it took me quite a few years later before I went back to school. And that's pretty much when the light went on. I had the opportunity to hear a gentleman by the name of Rick Dove, who I know many of you know as the first Neuse Riverkeeper, speak at an event. This is for me. So people say, do you love your job? Nope, because I don't have a job. Well, is this your career? No, it's not even my career. I think you'll find a lot of people, and many of you are on this call today. This is a calling and a passion, because if it's not, you're going to get beat down. And as many of you again on this call will attest to, this environmental stuff is exhausting. But I have a almost 3-year-old grandson. One of the things that I think about quite often is there's enough left for me. There's enough left of everything you look at for me. What about my grandson? What am I leaving for him? So, not to make it sound all grandiose and whatever it may sound like, I've got to do something for him. If it's just me, then okay, that's where I'm going to start. But it has been such a pleasure to work with so many of you and see that passion. Now we need to bring the younger folks up.
Yes, absolutely. Could you tell us a little bit about the history of the Crystal Coast Waterkeepers and the River Watch? I'm not clear in my mind which is which.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on right now, and Katie, who is one of our board of directors, we're talking about that whole branding thing, as they call it. I was with Waterkeeper Alliance, and I kind of missed that, being on the ground, boots on the ground, meeting people. So myself, along with Rick Dove and a few other folks, we started Coastal Carolina River Watch. And once we had that up and running, we wanted to apply for a Waterkeeper license. Everybody who uses the name Riverkeeper or Waterkeeper is licensed by Waterkeeper Alliance. So we applied for what we decided to call the Crystal Coast Waterkeeper program. And we got that. That started in 2016. And then in, I think it was 2018, we brought in the White Oak New Riverkeeper Alliance, which was another Waterkeeper program underneath of the overarching Coastal Carolina River Watch. So yeah, it does get a little confusing, but we're working hard. My title is Crystal Coast Waterkeeper. The organization is Coastal Carolina River Watch.
It's a very impressive title, I must say. It really is. It's quite lovely. Could you tell us what makes up the bulk of the work that you do?
Advocacy, education, and outreach. Again, a lot of what we're doing is taking the things that we see, the things that we're dealing with, and getting the public to understand. And probably the perfect example of that is this thing we call CAFOs, concentrated animal feeding operations. It's the way we raise our, primarily the pork and poultry products. It's not the way we used to do it. It's not, most people have seen the movie Charlotte's Web, the children's movie. We don't have farms that have that aura about them anymore. They're factory farms. We are very fortunate in Carteret County in the Crystal Coast watershed to have none. We have one that's been decommissioned. But in the White Oak and New Rivers, there are quite a few. So it's taking that information and getting people to understand that, again, it's that one finger pointing forward, there's three coming back. We all have a responsibility for the things that we're doing to our environment. And that has been one of the ones I've been working on, that particular issue for 19 years. So to answer your question, it's every day is different. We're working on a number of different things at this point. We've got the CAFO program. We're working on a program with our fisheries, recreational, commercial fisheries, specifically looking at water quality, because we just feel that particularly the coast of North Carolina is dependent on our clean water. And we're fortunate enough, again, to have people like Rett Newton who are in positions to be able to make some of those changes at a government level. So to say specifically, what makes up the bulk of my time, it's whatever happens to come across my computer at the time. Some days I'm doing Zoom calls all day, flying an airplane out on the water, getting dirty. That's the favorite part. So the bulk of what I do, Sue, is fight for your water, for our water.
Thank you. Thank you for doing it. I understand that the pandemic threw a wrench into the works with your CAFOs. Could you tell us about that a little bit?
What it did was it kind of limited for a while what we were able to do. But a lot of the work that we do, the field work and the flying, now, I don't get to fly the kind of aircraft that Rett has been flying in his history, but a lot of what we do is to take photos from a single engine airplane, because that's where you really get to see what's happening on the ground. So as far as that particular program, it didn't slow us down a great deal. We did learn, as most everybody else, how to navigate through Zoom. Sometimes still navigating through Zoom, but it was not being able to, for a lot of the work that I do a lot of work with the environmental justice communities. So, your communities of color, Black, Hispanic, low income, and not being able to be there on the ground support and to help champion the issues that they're suffering from, whether they be from CAFOs, whether they're suffering because they're fishermen who are having a difficult time. So yeah, it's been difficult. We're looking forward to getting back and really doing things. But to be honest with you, still maintaining that social distancing stuff. We did a fairly good job of continuing the work that we've been doing. It just unfortunately has not been as much in person as we would prefer.
I thought there was a moment of crisis when the meat packing plants were closing down because of the pandemic, and the farmers were wanting to kill off a lot of their pigs.
There was. We think about the pandemic and kind of what it did to us, but you have to. And I have a very big interest in our food system as a whole, and our food system, quite honestly, is broken. And one of those is the meat packing industry. And we have the largest hog slaughterhouse in the world in Tar Heel, North Carolina. So that's where all of these hogs, the close to 10 million hogs across North Carolina, are taken to be slaughtered. They're workers who, again, are primarily workers of color, low income. They were getting sick, but they didn't have the same choices that many of the rest of us have. And I consider myself to be privileged, and I'm very forthright with that. We're not taking into account what's happening with those who are not privileged in that way, who are being forced to, and in some degree, actually trying to be rewarded for coming to work when they're sick. But particularly in these meat packing facilities, these workers are standing shoulder to shoulder, 7.5 hours a day. There's no way they could afford, or they could avoid, the cross-contamination. So what was happening is, so many of these employees were getting sick, some of them actually dying, that the staffing of these slaughterhouses got so low they couldn't keep up. So the result of that, and we still don't know exact numbers from either the hogs or the poultry, many animals had to be destroyed. And Penny, I know you can probably recall, and I think I saw some other folks on here, we were trying to figure out at one point what to do. Could we make use of those animals in a way other than taking them to slaughter, to try to help the people who were suffering from the pandemic? We still to this day don't know how many animals were destroyed, but we know it was a lot. And animals were being shipped to other states. It really was a major impact. And I place a lot of the responsibility for that on the meatpacking industry, because they had the opportunity to do things differently. But all they wanted to do was make the money. And they wanted us to believe that there was a shortage of meat because of the pandemic, which was an out and out lie. They had stockpiled meats prior to the COVID ever coming around. So they weren't hurting for supply. They just wanted us to believe that. And that's been proven, it's been documented. So when it starts to affect people's food source, we've got a serious problem. And when it's done so purposely, which in the case of these slaughterhouses, these industries, meatpacking, it was done in a lot of ways purposely. On both ends of the spectrum, they were negatively impacting their workers. They were also negatively impacting the consumers by driving up prices, making us think there's not enough toilet paper, even though they don't make toilet paper. Just a comparison. So we've learned quite a bit, and I think we're going to be ready for something else to come along, and that something else may very well happen this year. We're heading into hurricane season, so it's another time of the year that we get very concerned about the way this industry, and I use the term stranglehold, the way these industries have a stranglehold over not just North Carolina, but the country as a whole. So kind of a long way around your question, I think, but hopefully that answered.
No, it's very, very interesting. I want to ask you about the Marine Debris Symposium. But first, I would like to collectively ask us to just, for a moment of reverence, just at the simple title here, Marine Debris Symposium. By itself, that is such a phenomenon. It says so much about where we are. It says that marine debris is a domain of scientific inquiry unto itself, such that research is being done that would be presented at a symposium. And it took me quite a while sitting here in stunned silence Thinking about this and reading about the Marine Debris Symposium, could you tell us a little bit about it before we move on to your colleague?
Sure. The Marine Debris Symposium, it's been going on, I think, I want to say 8 years, I think. But I guess one of the things that you kind of pointed out, why do we have to have a Marine Debris Symposium to start with? It goes back to the very question, why are we still throwing so much trash into our waters? That we have to put together something like the Marine Debris Symposium. There were people, because it was a Zoom this year, we did have the opportunity. We had people from around the world who were part of that symposium. And it's amazing the research and the information that's out there. It'd be great if we could take that Marine Debris Symposium and drop it into everybody's living room, because there really was a lot of information that came out of that. And one of the things that you had mentioned, Sue, was what is this collaborative island solutions? And it was part of the Marine Debris Symposium agenda. And it was basically some folks from the Bahamas area who, you think we have a problem with trash? Think about a small island. What do they do with theirs? So you now have a lot of different collaboration that you would not have had before coming together and trying to figure out, how do we take care of this problem? The Marine Debris Symposium was held in the Crystal Coast area, but it's not a Crystal Coast area problem alone. It's a worldwide problem. And it really is getting to the point where if we don't figure out how we're going to do something about this, again, I don't know what there is in store for my grandson.
Right. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to turn my attention to Rett Newton now. Rett, I just spoke with Tom Keyes, who had the day before testified to Congress about the damage to be done by offshore drilling. He's very optimistic, by the way. According to Tom, in 2015-16, tourism employed 3,000 people and brought $337 million into Carteret County. He said that today that number would be much, much higher, and he could not give an accurate estimate for the fisheries, but he said it's very high. As the mayor of Beaufort, you must be hyper aware of the value of safe coastal water to the economic strength of Beaufort and Carteret County. Just how critical is it, in your opinion?
Well, thanks for that question, Sue. The reality is, what we have found is that cleaning up our waterways is not only good for public health, but it's good for commerce. I mean, who wouldn't want to come to a clean water coastal community? And the flip side is, if people come here and it's really filthy with marine debris, they're not going to want to be here. And so we've made a concerted effort to clean up our waterways. And I'll just kind of step you back a little bit, because when I retired from the Air Force, when I was young in the 60s and 70s, one of the rites of passage in the Newton household was to swim across Taylor's Creek to the it wasn't the Rachel Carson Reserve at the time, but swim across, and that was your rite of passage. So when I retired, obviously not wanting to admit that I'm getting to be a crusty old guy, I still I would run down to Fisherman's Park. I would jump in the water. I would swim across. I would walk across the reserve, say hello to the wild horses, and then run up and down Bird Shoal. And it was staggering to me, the amount of marine debris that was there. So I started taking trash bags with me, and still doing the workout, but going up and down Bird Shoal and picking up marine debris, and then leaving it for the site manager, Paula Gillikin, to pick it up. It is a staggering amount of marine debris. And so this was about the time that the Duke Marine Lab was building their drone facility. And so they asked if I'd like to go volunteer, and I said sure, because I was building drones on my kitchen table with the intent of being able to identify marine debris. And sure enough, able to see marine debris that was inaccessible from the ground, and see where it had been pushed up. But working with Duke, taking it to the next level, is being able to map these entire areas and look for spots of marine debris. So we mapped the entire Rachel Carson Reserve to include Middlemarsh, and we found 373 areas of marine debris, not just, those are not individual pieces, but areas of marine debris. And then you kind of look and you do a heat map and say, well, where are the aggregation points? And it's very clear when you do that heat map where those aggregation points. And then the next thing you do is say, okay, so we know where this marine debris is aggregating. How did it get there? And so using GPS drifters and some other very simple technologies, kind of seeing how the currents go and then figuring out where those aggregation points, it all kind of makes sense after a while. You know where the currents are, you know, certainly after a flood or a storm event, you're going to get more marine debris, and then you can go see these spots. So after being elected as mayor, it was and oh, by the way, I hope all of you choose to be elected officials. And if you do so, please take the path that I did, which is unopposed. And it was kind of interesting because prior to Hurricane Florence, with the great work of NOAA and Paula Gillikin and our town staff and the Coastal Federation and other people, we had a NOAA marine debris grant. This is prior to Hurricane Florence, and the thought process was we're going to pull up some illegal moorings in Taylor's Creek that we know exist. Also, before Hurricane Florence, we started to work on kind of a harbor management ordinance because we had a real problem with derelict vessels. And so everything kind of changed up right after Hurricane Florence with the devastation of Hurricane Florence. But NOAA allowed us to transition that $67,000 from just illegal moorings. And the end result is after Hurricane Florence, Beaufort, with the help of Paula Gillikin and Towboat USA and NOAA, we pulled up 11 derelict vessels, 120,000 pounds of marine debris, 34 illegal moorings, 7 car tires, and it was a massive effort. And so what we did is continuing on using drones to kind of spot marine debris, especially on the east end of Carrot Island. There were all these exploded docks everywhere, just all these wood particles everywhere. And you say, well, this is just natural wood. Well, the reality is it's not. First of all, it's covering up marsh areas and it's killing the marsh. The second is treated wood is made out of arsenic. So that's a toxin as well. So because we had done this massive cleanup, because we had done some more mapping, we had worked very closely with Paula and the reserve system, we were able to work with our representative, Pat McElrath and Senator Norm Sanders, and we expanded our jurisdiction east all the way to the end of Taylor's Creek and all the way north through Gallant's Channel. And what that allowed us to do is have essentially a marine protected area on steroids, because we can enforce what's going on there. We can, and we still have, to a much lesser degree, some problem with derelict vessels. And that's complex too, because some people cannot afford to dispose of their vessels. That's just the reality. Some people live in these vessels and don't have the capability, once they no longer have the ability to maneuver in their vessels. Some people, right before a storm comes in, leave their vessels and hope that they can just wash their hands of it, and the citizens of Beaufort and the taxpayers will take care of it for them. And so we have a more strict harbor management plan, and we're going to continue with that effort as well. And back in January of 2020, thanks to the great efforts of the Marine Debris Symposium and others, the Coastal Federation published the first North Carolina Marine Debris Action Plan. And in the town of Beaufort, we were the first community in February, after it was published in January, to be the first community to embrace and endorse the Marine Debris Action Plan. And it does have a structure that you should be able to follow. Now, my game plan was going to be, I want to get the business community involved. And Harriet Altman certainly she has been a great person to kind of talk through some of these issues as well. But in March, COVID rolls in, and that just kind of got sidebarred for a while. I do think that the business community has a role to play in this. It would be much better from coming from the business community rather than coming from a government official saying you have to do this. Right now, there probably needs to be some ordinances to kind of help this process along the way, but we're not going to arrest our way out of marine debris problem, but enforcement is important. I'd like to say that we're not going to clean up our way out of the marine debris because we're only capturing a fraction of the marine debris that's actually out there. And so again, I kind of get back to the point of we have to change a culture. We have to find alternatives to single-use plastics. It's just unsustainable in its current form.
Very good. Thank you. You know, it's so exciting to listen to you talk about this. It seems like it should be easy to get the community behind you if there's enough public relations. Is there a piece of this that is to engage the community, the schools, organizations, churches, groups?
Oh, the schools are doing an amazing job, and certainly the marine science institutes that are here in Carteret County, which, oh, by the way, rival any in the world. They're getting to the schools, so I feel like the students are getting a sense of the magnitude of the marine debris problem. And again, when you talk to citizens or business owners, the question is, why wouldn't you want to have a clean water coastal community? And I haven't had a single person tell me they don't want a clean water coastal community. So that narrative is there. And in Beaufort, we want to be that clean water coastal community, but we're influenced by the surrounding area. So yes, we can do certain things in Beaufort. We still have our challenges here, but I think we've made some great strides. But we really need to partner with the surrounding area. This is much bigger than one community, especially since we are influenced. But let me talk a little bit more about science affecting policy. Working with Dr. Rachel Noble, she was able to measure toxins going into our waterways. So some of you who have traveled through Beaufort may have noticed we have a little bit of a pothole problem, right? So, and people have complained about potholes for decades. It's kind of good sport, but what I am much more concerned about what's underneath that pothole than I am the pothole itself, because we know we have sewer systems that are leaching into our stormwater system that are getting into our waterways. So working with Dr. Noble, identifying the magnitude of that problem, and then doing some sleuthing to try to figure out where that's coming from. When we do these massive infrastructure projects that we have underway in Beaufort right now, we're going to fix these systems, and then we're going to measure again to see if we have mitigated those problems. I think we're going to have significant mitigation. I don't think it's going to be perfect. I think we'll still have some concerns, and we can follow up with that as well. So again, this is another great case of where science is informing policy.
Great. That's wonderful. As Greta Thunberg would say, get behind the science, right?
Right.
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 Since we're talking about science, I need something cleared up for me again, and that is when we talk about coastal water quality, it is an enormous umbrella. Could you take a stab at elucidating for us, what are we actually talking about? It's not just marine debris.
No. So and even marine debris has its own subcategories, right?
Right.
Abandoned and derelict vessels are a subcategory of marine debris, probably the most visible there. But then you have the PVCs, then you have the plastic bottles, then you have all these other subcategories of marine debris. But you're right. You also have stormwater contaminants. You have agricultural runoff. You have black water, gray water concerns. You have a wastewater treatment plant, which is really good, but it doesn't get everything. It doesn't get microfibers. It doesn't get drugs that go through your system. And as a classic example, and this isn't really a toxin, as far as I know, but Splenda goes through your body, through the wastewater treatment plant, out into the waterways. So it's actually a really good human indicator. If you're looking for Splenda, you can tell the effects of what's happening. But the same thing with drugs that go through your body through the wastewater treatment plant and maybe having an impact on the nurseries, right, for our fisheries. So that's another key thing. Microbial stuff. So fecal indicator bacteria is one way of kind of detecting those toxins that are going in there. And then chemicals. For instance, in the high-rise bridges, and this just makes sense, right? You've got car tires, and car tires fragment at very small scale over time. But those fragments are on the bridge. If you look where the stormwater system is on the high-rise bridge, it goes right down into the marsh and into our waterways. So you can actually chemically measure things as small as tire fragments. So these are just classic examples, but Sue, you're exactly right. This is much larger than just marine debris. To be a clean water coastal community, you have so many different modes for toxins to get into our waterways.
Yes, and it reaches out into so many other aspects of life, like our CAFO having a flood and destroying waterways, but also our food system is a part of that we need to think about. And obviously Splenda as well. I didn't think about the Splenda.
Well, your point, Sue, too, is you can certainly start to see some dead zones because of algal blooms in some of our rivers, and Larry is much more proficient on that than I am. But you can scientifically measure that in area and in depth and extent. So you have the capability to kind of understand the magnitude of that problem as well, because that dead zone kind of works its way into say the Pamlico area or even into our Newport River estuary. So anyway, these things are all tied together.
Yes. I would really like to know from both of you, Larry and Rett, how well are government and non-governmental organizations working together and working with you? Is there a reason for us to be hopeful that enough work will be coordinated that we can improve the situation? Who wants to go first?
Well, I'll take a stab at that first. Okay. And I'm going to be pretty blunt.
Okay.
We need people like Rett running for office, because right now, the way I see it, they're not the people who are setting, and I shouldn't say everybody. There are a lot of politicians sitting in a chair for the wrong damn reason. It's not about what they do for us anymore. And again, I make it sound like it's everybody. It's a very broad generalization. We do have some folks that we can work with, but until we get enough people, again, I'm putting a plug in for my man Rett there, until we can get enough people who can really see it without the blinders on, and without, you asked a question about how do the governmental, government and non-governmental organizations work together. My biggest concern is how the governmental and the industry people are working together. Doesn't matter whether it's oil, whether it's big agriculture. It's up to us, and with folks like yourselves, who are now, we're getting back to that point where we're demanding, we're not asking, we're demanding results from our government, whether it's local, regional, state, federal. And I think, we, and I'm talking about myself as a non-governmental organization, we can understand both sides of it. Doesn't mean we have to like it. I can't understand how you can have issues that we know are just so much common sense, but because there is unfortunately, some dollar influences behind it. And again, I'm talking from me, and it's rather blunt. And I really don't apologize for that, because it's time for us to really take that stand, figure out who we can put in there to make that difference. Because if we continue to on the same track that we're on now, what's the old line? You can't keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Well, damn it, we're getting the same results all the time.
Yeah.
And we haven't. Sorry, I'm starting to get a little bit frustrated here. And I think that's what sometimes gets in the way of some of the non-governmental organizations, is that, would sometimes maybe try to fix things the wrong way. But going back to a lot of what Rett was talking about, the science is there, but so is the money to influence our politicians. So to me, it's always like, I'm going to sidestep the politicians. There are two courts when it comes to the environment. There's the court of law, and then there's also the court of nature. Court of law, we can set all the rules, regulations we want to, and hopefully we can make some difference. Sooner or later, it's nature's court that's going to take over. But the subset of nature's court is the court of public opinion. Public opinion has got to start to mean something. And if I have to beat my head against the wall till the day I take my last breath, we've got to fix the problem. And I know that's an old saying, or an old point of view. As a non-governmental organization, I'm more than happy to work with anybody until you don't want to work with us anymore. And like I said earlier, this is not something that I could just consider. It's a job that I do from 9 to 5. We need more of that. And what we really need, we've got to start getting to our youth. So as a non-governmental organization, we're trying to do the education aspects. You look at the talent that is coming out of Duke Marine Lab, out of UNC, NC State. We've got to get this next generation. Unfortunately, they're going to have to fix a lot of what we screwed up. So to me, Sue, it's not a two-way street with the government and the non-governmental organizations. They're the ones that are putting up the roadblocks. And again, I know I sound like I'm being generalizing. It's not that way. There's a lot of good folks out there. It's very frustrating though, when you know that there is a senator or a representative in one of the other counties who they're so much in the pocket of industry, they don't even try to hide it. To me, that's morally wrong. So, working together, I'm more than happy. And again, I know I keep going back to our man Rett. That's why I'm optimistic that we can start to see that the environment is not a commodity. It's a precious resource again. Yeah. So let's get back to those days in the 50s and 60s where we had these campaigns to not litter, not throw trash. It is up to the non-governmental organizations though to keep on fighting. And the way I see it, we're in a fight. And by having the support of folks like who are on this call is huge. And I'll even go as far, to me, it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on. This environmental stuff should not be a partisan issue. And I'm not pointing fingers. It just gets extremely frustrating. And to even go back to the period of time where we were trying to deal with this offshore drilling and seismic testing. How stubborn can you be to be surrounded by a community, a county who is so adamantly opposed to this, but you side with the industry for reasons that should not be? And I'm kind of going on a little. I'm going to let Rett jump in here at this point.
Yeah, so this is a really good opportunity for this audience to kind of talk about one of the things that I'm really concerned about. and that's the health of the Newport River estuary. If you talk to any fishermen that have been working the estuary for a couple of decades, they will tell you that it is in decline. It is stressed. And with I-42 coming into Carteret County, we're going to have thousands more visitors, thousands more residents, and certainly that's good for commerce. Good news for you all is that you're going to be able to get to the Raleigh-Durham area in short order. But the bad news is all that additional stormwater is going to be going into the estuary. And it's already stressed. And it's my concern, unless there are mitigation measures that are incorporated, that the Newport River estuary could be at risk of collapsing. And that may seem overly dramatic, but it's possible if we just allow this to happen and not work with DEQ and DOT and the county and the municipalities to mitigate these measures, because we've seen what happened in Wilmington. They really didn't account for I-40 and the booming population there, and they're still trying to play catch up. We don't want to do that in Carteret County, and we're behind the power curve. We just are behind the power curve. But we really need to think in advance of how do we mitigate the stormwater specifically from that, because you're going to have additional apartment complexes, less pervious surface, more stormwater. And if you go to the Walmart mini mart as you approach Newport and you go down that hill, that's the headwaters of the Newport River estuary, right? So on either side of the highway, all those ditches are all going into the Newport River estuary. And this is just going to become increased. There's going to be more silt that goes into the estuary, which is going to damage the oyster beds. And so this is a really classic example where we kind of see this train wreck occurring. How can we use the nonprofits that are so strong in Carteret County and the surrounding area? How do we work with the science capabilities that are here to measure these things? Dr. Hans Pearl is brilliant with looking at these things. And then how do we work with the governmental entities to make sure that we maintain the health of the Newport River estuary? The good news is, the Newport River estuary is very small. The bad news is it's very small and very vulnerable as well. So I just want to talk to this audience specifically about the threat to the Newport River estuary, which is already stressed. And we know this, and we just need to be able to protect it. So anyway, thank you, Sue.
Thank you so much.
And
both
Sue,
of you.
if I can add on to what Rett, the Newport River to me is kind of the canary in the coal mine.
Mm-hmm.
It's a large enough ecosystem and a small enough ecosystem that we need to pay attention. And it's when we opened the doors in our Moorhead City office, 2 days later, I had one of the scruffiest looking guys you'd ever want to see walk up to the door, and he said, "Can you help me?" I said, what do you need? He said, "I grow oysters on the Newport River and I can't make a living." Okay, tell me about it. And with tears in his eyes, this guy is telling me what we should already know. But Rhett's categorization of what's going to happen when 42 comes through, we're already seeing the impacts from when 70 came through.
Yeah.
When you look at a place like the upper Jarrett Bay, which has been closed permanently to shellfishing, well, where the heck is that coming from? In my opinion, DOT is one of the largest polluters of our waters. And now we've got this Route 42 coming through that they're touting as being such an economic boon. Well, I think Rett referred to it earlier. People ain't coming if the water's dirty.
That's right.
So the Newport River to me is kind of like that microcosm that says, here's what can happen when we don't do it well. We can put all the oyster beds in there we want, but we can't rely on the outtake taking care of the input. And right now we ain't doing it. And the Newport River to me is a first step. And again, it's that canary in the coal mine that's saying, hey, I'm in trouble here. And if you don't figure this out, I'm gone. And it's not going to be a good thing.
Right. Let us pause here to turn to Wendy and ask if we have some questions from the audience.
We do. We have some questions and several comments. Let me try to summarize if I can. People, as both of our speakers have indicated, are concerned about the pollution, the plastics, etc. How do we make this less political? And how, Rett, you mentioned that the schools were doing a great job, but we have not seen local students. I have not personally seen local students really involved. What can we do to get more young people in the area involved?
Yeah, I'll talk about Liz DiMattia specifically. She's a natural scientist over at the Duke Marine Lab, and she is very active in the schools and in the Boys and Girls Club, and taking kids over to the Rachel Carson Reserve and showing the magnitude of the problem when they do those cleanups. So I do feel like that's getting there. But the flip side of that is the Carteret County school system still uses single-use plastics for their lunches and everything. So, obviously that would be a very difficult transition as well. But is that some way of looking to explore getting rid of single-use plastics in one area? So yeah, this is going to be a really complex challenge for all of us. And one thing that Harriet and I have talked about is a campaign, because we need to play the long game here, and maybe focus on the tourist season in 2022, because it'll take a little while to generate that momentum. But there's a media aspect to this, there's an education aspect to this, there's the ability to clean up to this as well. So it really does need to be a campaign, and maybe we can work with Tom Keyes with the Chamber of Commerce, because certainly this is good for the Chamber of Commerce to have a clean water county as well. So yeah, we really need to focus on a campaign to start to reduce, and then hopefully at some point eliminate some of the marine debris that we're seeing.
Is there a way to communicate with the business leaders, either through Rotary or something, and get them behind this? Or
yeah, all of them. So the business development associations, the Chamber of Commerce, the Rotaries, the Lions, the Beaufort Garden Club, the Beaufort Women's Club. Yeah, I think this has to be a really large effort that gets to everybody. And I do hear it so frequently about people that are concerned about it. But there are also other people, and realistically so, that's not in their hierarchy of needs, because we know we have a lot of people in Carteret County alone that are really struggling right now. So maybe that's not exactly in their hierarchy of needs to take the efforts that some of us can take. But we do need to consider the complexity of it, and it's unsustainable. So why not make incremental change here?
Yes.
so Harriet, sorry.
Let me just add, when I was speaking with Tom Keyes, I mispronounced his name, he told me he is on the board of an organization called the Business Alliance to Protect the Coast. So businesses are working on this as well. I mean, they understand the value.
And Sue, I'm going to give a shout out to Tom Keyes. Tom is whether it's co-chair or chair of BAPAC, as they refer to it. And a lot of us got to know more about Tom and about BAPAC through the offshore drilling seismic testing issue. When you look at that organization, and I will get the numbers wrong, I know, but there's like 50,000 businesses. There's 500 commercial fishing families up and down the coast who are part of this organization. So people are they're really looking for who to call, who to get in touch with. And when you have an organization like BAPAC, it's an example of giving people an outlet. But yeah, there are two types of people, in my opinion. There's the ones who don't know and the ones who don't want to know.
Right.
I'm not always sure which one is the better target. I think maybe the ones who don't know to some degree, because you can probably change their mind. But as Rett was saying too, there are some people who they either they don't want to be responsible, or right now, particularly in this pandemic, their focus has changed.
Mhm.
And I saw somebody put in the chat earlier, the amount of trash seems to have increased because of the pandemic. That may or may not be true, but we're seeing some uncomfortable trends, and education, outreach, getting information is going to be key, because it is that court of public opinion that's going to sway the tide.
Yes.
So that's one of the things Harriet was asking is, what should we do about the Newport issue? Should we write Congress? What are you suggesting?
Well, what I would suggest, every time I have an opportunity to speak to a group like this or any other group, I just keep beating the drum that the Newport River estuary is in real trouble. It hasn't resonated yet. And so maybe this audience can think of, okay, what is that trigger that all of a sudden people start to take notice? And I dare say, if the commercial fishermen started to speak about this, and they've certainly spoken to me about this. And one of the really interesting things that Larry and I, our interaction with commercial fishermen, they understand pollution, and they understand it at a scientific level. I mean, they speak the science talk. It's amazing that they understand the level of these toxins and what they do, what they don't do. I was just blown away with how precise their knowledge of pollution was. So the commercial fishermen, they get it. So maybe that's a good starting point that I haven't really worked with yet to start to tell the government officials that there's trouble. There's real trouble.
More questions, Wendy?
Yes, well, just Penny reminded us, and Rett has mentioned this, is that Harriet and Suzanne Wheatcraft, Harriet Altman and Suzanne Wheatcraft are working on heading up a group to find solutions to plastic and litter issues. So anyway, we have that going on with
Very
the
good.
Sierra Club group.
Good. That's wonderful. I'm delighted to hear that. I think we're going to wrap it up. This is not goodbye. It's until we meet again, and let's all keep our shoulders to the wheel and do whatever we can and stay in contact with each other. I want to thank everyone for joining us, and most especially, of course, our guests, Larry Baldwin and Rett Newton. Thank you so much for taking your time. If you in the audience would like to start writing letters to elected officials to push for support for environmental programs, please visit www.carteretdemocrats.org, whether you are a Republican, unaffiliated, or a Democrat. We have a letter league that meets once a month, and we can direct you to the position papers of the National Federation of Democratic Women on environmental justice and on climate change as a health crisis that you may copy and use in full or part for your letters. And we put access to elected officials in Washington and Raleigh at your fingertips. Easy peasy. Our next Dockside Chat will focus on drinking water quality. Lee Ferguson, who is an associate professor of civil and environmental engineering in the Nicholas School of the Environment at Duke University and a nationally recognized specialist in the quality of drinking water, will be joined by local experts from Carteret County, including Lisa Smith Perry from the West Carteret Water Corporation and a member of Carteret County for Public Water, the group that is protesting having their water system sold. So that will be on June 15th at 7:30. I will keep you all informed with texts and emails. And I thank you very much for being here. I will see you at the next Dockside Chat.